Hi there. Welcome to The Preventable, the podcast giving you a seat at the table with conversations about the intersection of alcohol, drugs, and mental health in everyday lives. Take a seat and join us.
Welcome to The Preventable. As always, we could not do any of this without the incredible support of Hubbard Radio. They donate the studio space to us and the equipment, and they're just, all the staff and everybody are just so incredibly kind, and we're just so really humbled and grateful that they keep allowing us to do this. So very appreciative of Hubbard. And I am appreciative that I am joined by today's guest, who we are just kind of getting to know each other.
Yeah.
But I think we have a lot of similarities, a lot of commonalities, and missions are very aligned, which I think is really cool. So With me today is the founder and CEO of GCI Inc., Mr. Stacy Bernaugh. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
All right. We're going to dive in. Okay. So GCI Inc., it stands for
the Greenhouse Communication Initiative.
And you've been around since
2005.
But you did not get your start in St. Louis.
No, started in Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Okay. Are you from Kentucky?
No, I'm actually from St. Louis.
Okay.
Originally, but I've never actually lived here until, I would say, the mid-90s.
Okay.
During college, my parents are both from here. My father was military. So I mainly grew up in California.
Got it.
That's my home, the Monterey Peninsula.
So what brought you to Bowling Green?
College, speech and debate scholarship. So that's what took me to Bowling Green, Kentucky. Changed my life, changed my world, a whole new world. But it was the best thing for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And who would ever thought that a young Southern Bay Area boy would find his way and place in Bowling Green, Kentucky?
Amazing.
Yeah.
So Bowling Green, and while you're there doing speech and debate scholarship, what university?
Western Kentucky University, the Hilltoppers.
Okay.
That's right.
So you're there, you're doing speech and debate, I'm sure you're killing it, and you get an idea to start a nonprofit?
Well, actually, I had always wanted to do something to give back to the community, right? I just didn't know how. So my teammates and I at a tournament were actually talking about how we wanted more of an outcome and impact for people who were looking for jobs, who were trying to change their lives. You know, we wanted speech and debate to grow to more people. This is just in between some debate rounds, some of my teammates and I. And,
literally, it's like water cooler chat, but you're in between rounds and you're just like, hey, how can we use this and give back?
Yes, but we also wanted to kind of do more workforce development, right?
Okay.
To gear people toward entrepreneurship, to kind of apply the skills, right? So as I'm still competing, I just kind of let that idea go. And then after I was finished competing, I was doing some slam poetry. And I was also trying to create a nonprofit. And I was just thinking, like, as I read more about how to start the 501c3 and what the requirements were, it's like, I'm already doing this work. And so it took me a little bit to kind of align the two, you know, what I was doing, and then kind of try and legitimize that into a real business. And it just happened. And we just started programming.
You're hilarious. Fire. It just happened.
It really did.
Look, you work really hard.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
I mean, one thing that I try to highlight on this podcast and in everyday conversations is, number one, how challenging the nonprofit world is.
Yes.
How difficult it is for a young, I'm going to say under 10 years, because I think, there's a lot of building that needs to happen.
Yeah.
But it's hard for a young nonprofit. And for the first several years, the executive director does not get paid.
That's right.
And you're basically doing an act of service and calling it your job, because it is your job. It's more than a full-time job, but you're not cutting a paycheck.
Oh, no, not at all. And in the beginning, we were, supporting so many artists from around our region. Our participants always earn money for participating. It was a financial struggle. And we didn't have the 501c3 status in the beginning. We weren't raising money. We didn't have any donations or grants. We were just operating off program fees. And I'm really learning how to work that budget. But the outcomes happen, the impacts, and I really don't like to focus on that, because it just kind of takes away from what we're doing, except for when I'm working and connecting with people like you who understand. Especially because, I founded the GCI from Greenhouse Poetry is what we started at, out of nothing. And it was difficult, but it was empowering, because I couldn't find a job in Bowling Green, Kentucky. over the summer. I couldn't find a job as a cashier. I couldn't find a job as a file clerk.
Why do you think that is?
I think, in a sense, number one, I just was not good at articulating my skills, and I don't think that my resume was appropriate for the jobs I was qualified for. I also think that, people were like, look, you're overqualified for some of these jobs. And I didn't know that, and I just wanted jobs to kind of get me through, to pay the rent, to pay my bills. And, I was really shocked when I started Greenhouse Poetry. Everyone did business with me in the city. Everyone, from the city government to the bars, restaurants. I did business with everyone. No one's really ever told me no, thankfully.
Well, yeah, you're a debater.
That's right.
Your ears should have been ringing because I was talking about you on Monday.
Okay.
And with Lakeisha, and it was all good.
Yeah.
And she also has a background in debate.
That's right.
And we were talking about, I was never on the debate team. I was never on mock trial. It was always interesting to me.
Yeah.
But I was never on those. I guess I'm wondering, debate. Like, for those people who don't know, like, what is it? Why is it an important skill? And then how does that lend itself to poetry? Do you know what I mean? Like, what is debate other than arguing? Because it's a lot more than that.
Yes.
Obviously. Talk a little bit about why that was intriguing to you and like what is debate in general and how that kind of relates to your organization. Okay,
I'll start with the why first.
Sure.
And I'll try to explain a little bit about speech and debate, which we call forensics.
Okay.
And then that will maybe create some clarity between the link and me being a debater and a poet, which is kind of unique.
Yeah.
I think the why is just simply I was in a political science class. Early morning class, Monterey Peninsula, 8 o'clock, hated the class. It was an intro to government class, Government 101. I missed the class a lot. I was there one day to read a case study on affirmative action. I was really upset at the professor for, why would you have me read this? Who is this Shelby Steele sellout I'm reading about? No disrespect to Shelby Steele, but I definitely disagree with what I was reading about affirmative action. And I took it home, and it was one of the first times, I actually read before class on my own the night before.
You actually did the homework.
Oh yeah,
and
actually did the homework. Followed the syllabus and everything. And I was just upset, and I sat in class, and I was looking out the window. She could tell that I was triggered, and so she waited, and anyone have anything to say? And I just raised my hand, and then my life changed after that.
Whoa!
So
really?
I went on what I would now call, pretty much a rant about. It was a rant, right? It wasn't. It was thoughtful. It was emotional, but it wasn't really as reasonable as I would have wanted to present myself.
And so you were debating for affirmative action?
Oh yeah, I was on the side of affirmative action.
Okay.
And I was just, wondering why, we're in California. And at this time, I think I was on the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee on the campus because I had just had an incident in the printing area in the library with an employee, and someone who was stepping off the committee was like, wow, you're really articulate and you're passionate, and I can see that you're upset about the way you're being treated here. So would you like to join this committee? So all these things kind of came together. I had never heard of speech and debate. I had seen debate on television. I never heard it. We didn't have the opportunity in elementary, middle school, and high school like most of my teammates did when I went to Western Kentucky. So it was new to me. It was very new to me. And I was changing my life. My life was different. In the 90s, in the late 90s, I grew up in California, the Bay Area. There were a lot of influences, and some of those kind of influenced my life negatively. And so I would just say the Lord woke me up one day and shook me, and my life changed from then on. So
when you were in the government class and you went on the rant, did then that teacher kind of see something in you?
Yes. The next semester.
Always how it happens.
That's right. Dr. Marianne Ide, who is my Shira, she started the debate team, speech and debate team.
Stop. I just got chills. Okay.
Oh, yeah. It was the first time ever Monterey Peninsula College started the program. She came into my public speaking class, 8 a.m. again. This is second semester. And she's going on this presentation about speech and debate, and she's starting a program, and she's explaining things, and I am just not into it. I want to listen, but I have so many fears and obstacles and barriers in place. I'm not listening to her about that. And as she's walking out the class, she stops and she says, "Stacy, I expect you to be there." And it was a demonstration in San Francisco at San Francisco Community College. They were just taking a van up there, some students, for a demo to see what speech and debate was. And so she said, Stacy, I expect you to be there. And I was like, on a Saturday?
Like you're kidding.
Like, are you serious? But, I had all these.
Do I get extra credit for
I had
this?
these dreams and these aspirations, and so at this point, I can feel them coming to the forefront. And so I just said, yeah, I'll go. And I went and showed up to San Francisco Community College, changed my life. Started a speech and debate team. Our first year, we only went to 2 tournaments, I think. But my first tournament, I did pretty well. And then the next year was really difficult in the sense that I was transferring to UC Santa Cruz, University of California, Santa Cruz. I had a leadership scholarship. That's where I was going. I had also got accepted to San Jose State and San Diego State. So I was trying to figure out where I was going on my own, living on my own. And my lease ended in April. And so I was pretty much homeless. I was working at a hotel. So I was staying in the hotel, staying with my friend Colin, who's from Berkeley, and he was always going up, hanging out with his girlfriend, so I had his apartment really to myself. So that was really, really helpful for me because, Monterey Peninsula is very expensive, and there was no way that I was going to, on my front desk clerk salary, be able to come up with the first month, last month, security deposit for a new apartment. So all these things are going on. I had to actually raise the money to go to nationals. Well, I didn't raise the money. I had to go to the Board of Regents to ask for the money. And we got the money to go. I promised them we would win. I'd never been to nationals. It was in Jacksonville, Florida. Our school had never gone to nationals. We'd only been to state once.
In its second year.
In our second year, really our first year.
Wow.
So we did really well. My debate partner and I, Kelly Ireland, she's an attorney now in California. She had debated in high school. She was pretty good. And so we just did really well. We were the number 1 seed in the nation, undefeated. We lost in the national final round, though, on a 2-1 decision.
Episode or something. I'm sorry.
Yes.
I'm having flashbacks to Glee.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and I also won a national championship in impromptu speaking.
Impromptu speaking.
Yeah. And we also
where they give you a topic and they're like, go.
Yes. And so impromptu is they give you a topic, an object, or a quotation, or a word. And you have 2 minutes to make a 5-minute speech, really.
And now, debate, you don't win because you won the argument.
Well, no, yeah. It depends, and it also depends on your judge.
Or do you win because of how persive you are?
It depends on the judge.
Okay.
It depends on the judge. Every judge has their own paradigm. Generally, it's supposed to be, and there are different forms of debate. So in high school, there's Lincoln Douglas value debate.
Yes.
So 2 people, and it's mainly philosophical issues, talking about some political issues, but they use philosophy. And so there's a lot of normative-based arguments there. There's also policy debate, which is the king, the queen in high school debate, and that's team policy debate, and that's always solving political issues. You get an issue, and you have to do several things with that. But when I did speech and debate, I only thought that there were a few genres. And then when I went to the demo in San Francisco, I thought there was only debate. That's when I learned that there were other events. But we didn't have coaches for those events, so we didn't do those. Fast forward to Western Kentucky University, where we have a comprehensive forensics program, the best comprehensive forensics program in the nation.
And that's where you got the scholarship.
And that's where I got this full tuition scholarship from, to Western Kentucky. And we did different events. So they have oral interpretation, which is informative speaking, persuasive speaking, after dinner speaking, and rhetorical criticism. And so these events are under the umbrella of forensics, which is speech and debate, and so is debate. In college, debate there are 2 forms, or there are really 4 forms now. There's parliamentary debate, which I started in Kentucky, and that's kind of like impromptu speaking. You get a topic, which we call a resolution, and you have 15 minutes to prepare for the debate. You're not supposed to use outside sources. You're not supposed to use evidence. When I started, you were only allowed to use a dictionary, and coaches were not allowed to help. It's completely changed now. And then there's also policy debate, like I said, that's in high school, so it's 2-person. And, it's really intellectually challenging, but to me, it's just not. It has nothing on the best form of debate, which is Lincoln Douglas policy debate, which is what I did at Western Kentucky. And it's 1-person policy debate. And then you also have limited prep speaking, which is impromptu and extemporaneous speaking. And then you have oral interpretation, which is similar to acting, but it's not acting, it's interpretation. And you have prose, you have drama,
and this is where
which is dramatic interpretation, poetry interpretation, you have dual interpretation. That's right. And so these different genres, most of the time you have students, they will pick a genre. So you'll have debaters who don't do interpretation. They do not do poetry mostly. Most debaters will do extemporaneous speaking, which is a very challenging event, current events, and some of them will do impromptu speaking. Now, a lot of debaters do not do comprehensive forensics. Some do, but it's rare. Most of them go to Western Kentucky University or Webster University.
Really?
Who's one of our community partners, yes. And I just knew when I started, because like I said, I grew up in the Bay Area, so there was a lot of rap music. There's a lot of influence of Bay Area rap music growing up, and I just wanted to do poetry. I seen it at a tournament, and I just fell in love with it. And
okay, so I'm like writing down all these questions because I have so many.
Please interrupt anytime.
Well, I feel bad. Okay,
no, it's okay because I'll just keep going.
Well, so I know that in debate, I think maybe the Lincoln Douglas kind that you were talking about, you don't always get to pick your side.
You never get to pick your side.
Right. So how hard is that
when
you are having to stand for something that you don't stand for?
Yeah.
That has to be very feel like a contradiction.
If you don't know what you're doing, it is a contradiction. And if you're just doing it to try and win, oftentimes, then it may come across like that. The critical thinking aspect of debate is very important because what you are forced to do, we try not to put students in the situation that they will argue something that's morally repugnant.
Sure.
And that they disagree with. We also try not to have them argue truisms or tautologies. But
What's a tautology?
It is something that, if both of us agree that God exists, we're not going to debate if God exists. If both of us are moral people, we're not going to debate women's rights. We're not going to debate abortion. We're not going to debate slavery, right? Those types of things.
Okay.
If we agree on these premises, we're not really going to debate that. Or things that are already true. Right?
Got it.
That we know are true, like the sun creates warmth. It sends out sun rays. Are we going to debate that?
Right.
We're not going to debate, if the world is flat.
We're not a flat earther. We're not debating.
Yeah, but you will have,
flat.
now see, I don't want to go there because you will have some of that.
Whoa,
you will have people
really?
challenging ideas, and you will have people challenging premises.
Sorry to anybody who's a flat earther.
Oh, yeah, no, there are a lot of arguments. There are a lot of
Whoa.
deontological arguments that focus on the a priori aspect of things, of how things are. So not just talking about poverty policy, but what influences our framing of poverty policy. How do we look at it? What influences it? How does our rhetoric influence how we deal with these problems? How do we solve these problems? And how does our rhetoric influence that? So when you're arguing something that you disagree with, or something that you may not want to say, there are plenty of ways that you could find to be able to argue against an affirmative plan without necessarily saying that we should not solve poverty. And also, there's also the alt, right? You can also create alternatives and counter plans to do. So we assume that this problem is a problem, but we are recommending that we do this way, and the affirmative makes it worse.
Okay.
So this shit gets pretty tricky, but it's really fun, and I love it. So
in a nutshell,
okay,
you teach these skills to young people.
Young people and adults, yes.
And primarily young people and adults who would not otherwise have access to speech and debate? Or are these, in other words, are they in speech and debate clubs in their schools and then you're building on top of that? Or are these I think I know the answer, but are they done at after school programs that maybe they wouldn't have had access to in the past, and then these skills help them with job readiness and things like that?
Oh, yeah.
Is that the kind of underlying?
Well, we work with the adults we work with, the college students we work with. Most of them are in established programs.
They are in established programs.
Yes, we do work with some programs that are established, but it's rare because most of them are...
Like the one at Webster?
Yes,
okay.
Like the one at Webster. But we work with Webster frequently.
Okay.
Right, and frequently throughout the year, I would say 3 or 4 times a year, maybe 3 times a year, coaching, judging, and then they work on our program as well.
As mentors, maybe?
As staff.
Oh, cool.
So their director of forensics works on our programs. She's been doing that since pre-COVID.
Cool.
And also their assistant director worked with us. Some of their alum, but mainly the director works with our students, comes in, works with our elementary school programs, should be in some of the middle school programs. But the programs that are our foundation are all new. And these are students who would never have the opportunity to participate. These are students who the speech and debate community has just left them behind. They said, we're not going to work with you. And there are many reasons for that. I think that the first reason is just simple racism.
Right.
I think it's just a fear of African-American kids. I mean, a lot of people don't want to drive to North County. A lot of people don't want to deal with the classroom management. A lot of people assume that we can't do it. As a debater, I went through that my entire career. I would walking around, my partner and I, and people would chuckle at first, or we would get the topic, and it would be a topic about Iran or, interest rates, and they would look at us and assume that we couldn't debate the topic. Both of my former debate partners were white women, and so they would assume that we didn't know what they were doing, and we would just do our thing always. And so that's one of the barriers for our students, and that's one of the things that we do, is that we make sure that not only do they have an opportunity to do speech and debate at a very high level, and that we reward them at a high level. We give them good food, we pay them good money, and they have the best coaches. But we also want them to apply it. We also want them to apply it to the classroom and to their everyday life, the community, and to their careers.
So two things that were just kind of sparked. One is more of a comment, but, the class that you mentioned, the government class that changed your life, similarly, the class that changed my life, and that is still to this day the class that I use the most skills from, was freshman year. I had an oral comms class.
Really?
And it was, I think, a half or a third of a semester.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was, because we had to do intro to art, intro to music. Those two were not my things. And then intro to oral comms.
Yes.
Where we had to learn, stage marking and stage presence, and we had to tell, stories. And sometimes we would have a lot of time to work on it and creating the story arc and your tone and inflection and all of that. Anyway, it was led by our drama teacher.
Okay.
And when I have the opportunity to go back to my high school, which I do, to speak and things like that,
all right,
I am always placed in the little theater at the podium, which looks the same, smells the same.
Wow.
It's got the same vibe.
Okay.
And I always started off by saying, whenever I'm talking about drugs or whatever else, I'm always like, y'all, if I did not have that class, I would not be here today.
Yeah.
I would not be able to talk to media. I would not be able to talk to funders, to talk to board.
Yeah.
I mean, and that was as a 15-year-old.
Yeah.
To develop those skills. I mean, public speaking is a huge fear for most people.
It's the number one fear for adults. Yeah.
And so you are helping kids move away from that fear, but also giving them skills and maybe channel some of their stuff. Because I can imagine if you're a middle schooler and you're argumentative and you're getting into trouble because you're an argumentative person, if you could take that and kind of harness that and put that into debate, I imagine that's like exactly who you want.
Yes. And then we have some students who are high trajectory students. They'll never be in trouble. We have students that we work with incarcerated youth. We've been doing that since 2005. So we've done work in the Clayton Juvenile Detention Center and the Griscom Alternative School in the city here in St. Louis.
So it's really a wide range of kiddos.
It's a wide range of kids. We work with the shooters. I've had kids, some of my best debaters have been in jail for murder here in St. Louis. Kids from Memphis in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Kids from St. Louis in Kentucky. Kids from Atlanta, all over. It's just a wide range of folks that have the problem. But there's also we also go beyond. We kind of use the public speaking and that critical pedagogy to improve the writing. Writing is the most important thing to me, to us, is being able to write. So when we talk about, we talk back of the house things with the nonprofit and that's where I shine. That's what I love to do. I love to write. But speech and debate enabled me to be a confident writer. Because I was a good writer, but I wasn't good at structure and I wasn't good at a lot of things. As soon as I finished, speech and debate, I was able to apply that, winning writing contests on campus. Things changed. My grades went from high B's in English to very high A's. And simply because I was comfortable with the writing process, and then I was able to apply that. So for our students, we use the poetry to get them to be able to master the essay. We use the debate to get them to be able to master that. And then we also use debate for things like our older students. And I've only done this a couple of times because we're still growing. So we have hundreds of students that will be there in the next few years. But right now, there are only a couple of them. But we also used forensics to teach things like writing a grant. So if you've ever written a policy debate case, and you've ever filled out a grant application, they are very similar.
Interesting.
If you've ever done a logic model and a policy, I know you have. And I know your counterpart loves to do them.
Oh, Jenny loves a logic model.
Jenny said she loves them, right?
No thanks.
But if you've ever written a speech and debate policy case and you've done a logic model, the logic model is not a problem. It's easy because it's second nature. That's how you think. You line by line, you solve problems. You say, these are our inputs. These are the problems we're solving. These are the short-term, intermediate, long-term, outcomes, and here are the community implications. And we do that second nature. We do that, as debaters, naturally. We think that way naturally as problem solvers. And so even on an individual level, when I'm dealing with my bank or when I had an issue with a local, and I'll say their name, it was Bernaugh Toyota, had an issue with my vehicle that they kind of overlooked, and then they corrected it. And just my ability to, maintain calm through a situation that was dangerous for me. That social emotional learning is key for our students to be able to deal with conflict, talk to people from other communities, and then get a great result, right? So instead of me going to Bernaugh, right? Yep. And so instead of me going to Bernaugh Toyota and, them wanting to put me out, it's like, no, I want to go back there. I see them now, and I'd seen them as before, as them being a great business to do business with, but I still had to communicate to someone that there was an issue, listen to them, and then solve that problem, right?
Okay. So are most of the kiddos you're working with kids of color?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say 90% of them are African American. Okay.
So you used an adjective a couple of minutes ago that I have been told not to use. Okay. Particularly about people of color. And that adjective is articulate.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You laugh, but right?
People say it to me all the time.
Okay, well.
Oh, yeah.
So I would like to ask the question. So I have been told by lots of people that is a coded word that white people use to basically say, oh, wow, they can speak well.
Yeah, yeah.
And surprising.
Yes.
Wow, they're so articulate. Well, okay, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that word is used and you don't even realize it. And that's where, of course, that implicit bias comes in, or, explicit bias. But I wonder if you sort of have those conversations with your students, because they will inevitably, when they show up as you show up, which is very poised, very, composed, all of those things. Somebody who can't find the right adjective is going to say, Stacy's very articulate. Oh, yeah. Which basically means you sound white.
So for sure,
how do you talk about that with your students? Because I would imagine some of them want that. And then others don't.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm assuming there also might be some code switching that has to happen too.
Always. I've been told I'm a master at it. I really don't notice it, right?
And I'm sorry if this is a weird question.
It's not a weird question.
Like, these are things my friends and I talk about, and so I'm like.
And I'm not awkward, so this is a great question.
Good. Okay.
Because I've been going through it since my childhood.
Well, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, and I've been speaking a certain way. My brothers, we talk a certain way. My mother and father, they speak a certain way. We articulate a certain way. And for me, it's not offensive for me to use the word articulation as a goal, right? To be able to articulate, to be able to communicate effectively.
That should really be a goal for everyone.
It is a goal. But what I have experienced, people who, because I do articulate myself in a certain way, I do speak a certain way, that they are shocked by it and they are taken aback. And some people don't know how to communicate the fact that I do communicate effectively. Even if I just say, hello, my name is Stacy Bernaugh, then some people will say, oh, he sounds white. And you'll hear that most of the time from African American people. They tell you sound white. And I've been dealing with that. I don't know how to deal with that. And I think that in St. Louis, though, you will have other people. Because St. Louis is a little more forward than some other places. And some people will say to you, and some people, it's intentional. Some folks want to otherize you, and other people are just being honest, like, whoa, you're articulate. And they, and I try not to get as offended, because most of the time I can tell if it's something, but oftentimes I say, well, what did you expect? Right? How did you expect me to speak? What did you expect when, I didn't just show up here. I was invited here. Did you read my resume? Have you looked at my bio? Have you seen my credentials? So you should have expected something different. But oftentimes you can't say that, because there are people who, will not articulate themselves the way I do, who don't focus on grammar, don't focus on words and language the way I do. I'm really nerdy about it, and so I don't care what people think. Even when I was on the block with the homies, my partners, I talk the same way. All my friends know how I talk. They all know I exaggerate the consonants. They all know that I speak a certain way, and it's I got used to it. I think it's difficult for my students to deal with.
I was just going to say, I think it would be really hard. They don't know how to navigate.
Yeah. Oftentimes, they don't know how to navigate the negativity. But what I tell them is to be themselves. I tell my students, I don't want you to speak like me. You're not going to talk like me.
Right.
Your voice is not going to sound like mine. God gave me this voice. My parents chiseled it. My community, also helped develop it. And so you're not from there. You didn't grow up how I grew up. But what I want you to do is effectively communicate. I want you to use words correctly. I want you to understand the meaning of the words, and I want you to understand the meaning behind the things you say. And also, the nonverbal communication is very important.
So true.
But there is nothing that we really can do about that. I think that one thing aside from the articulation, people, when you are an African-American entrepreneur and you are someone who cares about how you present yourself, it does turn some people off. It turns other professionals off in a sense because, and I've been told I'm too professional. I've been told we're going to teach you how to be patient. I've had folks, say, oh, well, why do you all work for him, to my white staff? Oh, yeah. How do you mean you work for him? You mean he's in charge?
Oh, my
I've had
God.
people, white, African-American, Latino, Latinx, Chicana, come up to my staff and say, hi, Stacy, how are you doing? Just shake people's hands because it's a white dude in a suit. And they just look over like, that's Stacy.
That's Stacy.
Yeah, it happens all the time. So I try not to let it sit at the forefront, but there is that level of ignorance and aggravation that some people want to impart on me, and whether they're black or white. And it's just something that I have to deal with. And it's something that I tell my students that, there are a lot of people who are negative, and there are a lot of people who are jealous. Some people, it's not that. Some people, it's just they don't understand. Some people don't understand how to criticize the way you speak. And I just want my students to be the best communicators as possible. I don't discourage them from code switching because I think it's necessary. I think it's still...
It can be a safety thing.
It is a safety thing. It's a safety thing. It's also for me with, it's kind of like I will speak a certain way. And when I go into certain environments, I will have to have a certain way that I do carry myself just for my protection, for my safety, to ward off the sharks. And that's just a dynamic in our community we have to deal with. And the racist dynamic of you speak so well, you're so articulate.
Right.
It's just something that it's not something I deal with. But oftentimes, and this is really important. I do want to point out, because I am a debater, because I am a communicator, because I'm an expert, a forensicator, I do speak differently than someone who you may say, than my brothers, who we sound alike on the phone. I have two older brothers, we sound just alike. Me and Andre, Dion and I, we sound just alike. And we all sound, we can all code switch. But when you talk to Stacy, after a few minutes, it's me. Because I'm more technical, because I use different words, right? Mm-hmm. Because I do have a higher level of education.
You have a cadence too,
yes.
like a. Yep.
And I speak like a poet. I speak I speak in that rhythm oftentimes, and so some people can tell. But they go through the same thing. They don't have the college education that I have, but they still speak the same way, and so they go through it. And I don't know how they handle it. I'm not sure if they kind of just correct people on it, or if they just walk away over the next few days wondering, was that an insult? What did that person mean? Well, why would she say that? Why would he say that to me? And we do internalize it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for some people, it's definitely taken as an insult, and other people, it's almost like, oh, cool. Like, I'm glad you know what I mean?
Think it depends on the context.
It depends on the context, exactly. And so I think that it would be, what I'm interested in is how it works with your young people who are participating in your program because they see the positive outcomes, because they feel more self-confident, because they're developing all these skills, and at the same time know that when they go back home, they might be met with like, oh, who are you trying to be? You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
And so how to navigate that, I think is a perpetual challenge for people who maybe feel like they have their feet in two worlds.
Yes, and we do.
Yeah.
And it's not unique to our community.
No, of course
right?
not.
But the thing about our community is that I think the consequences are a little more harsh. I think that the consequences of not code switching or not assimilating, you could be left out. You could lose your life. And so, for my students, what I want them to know is, number one, that's not the main barrier to your participation. That's not one of our main barriers. Our main barrier is motivation, is an appreciation for education. Our main barrier is literacy, right? Confidence. Some of our students start to cry when it's their time to write, or when it's their time to read. I have students that are first, second grade, fifth grade, seventh grade. They can't read. I mean, at all, right?
Oh, yeah.
And so I try and focus on that. And as they're growing their voice, I want them to find their voice. Now, there are two things. You will get picked on in the community when you are engaged, because we did engage in a lot of debates in our community about a lot of critical social, economic, and political issues. And when you are a debater, you want to say, well, according to such and such, and then that can create some problems for you. You can get laughed at. People are like, I don't care about your studies. Don't talk to me about what you have in that box or what that, what you have on your laptop says. But then also there is a high level of respect, especially with people who know that that's who you are or have seen a transition in you. Mm-hmm. And so we do have both. We do have in our community the people that will pick on you. And oftentimes those are the same people who will elevate you and who honor you for those progressions in your language and in the way you think and your social emotional behavior. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it just takes time, and oftentimes it takes finding a different space to hang out in or be comfortable. And I've had to do that at times to find my own space. And then as you realize as a founder and a CEO, you just have to have your own space. It's true. Unless you can find other CEOs, there's no one. So what I want my kids to do is I want my kids to be able to be truth tellers. I want them to be able to tell their story. I want them to be able to examine evidence, to use logic and reason to make decisions. I don't focus on, because they're going to have to deal with that, and I can't stop that. They're going to have to deal with that in the community, and we're dealing with that in our community. And I still can't believe we're dealing with it, especially with what's going on now in politics and, who we have finally running for president. But I just think that we have to do something to have conversations about it, and talking about it is the best thing.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, so speaking of politics, without getting too political, but on the news, somebody was commenting on how articulate one of the candidates is and commenting on the laughter. And we've talked about the articulate issue, but I can relate to what you're describing, and I've shared this with my staff because when I first stepped into the executive director role, I was the first woman.
Yes.
And I was told that I lacked gravitas and that I needed to, by board members who are no longer on the board, but that I needed to sort of show up in a certain way. And so for the first 6 months to a year, I was really trying to play a part.
Yeah.
Right? I was trying to wear suit jackets. I was trying to wear high heels. I don't wear high heels. Okay? Yeah. I was trying to not smile. I was trying to be very,
you're trying to fit into this box, right?
Very masculine, for lack of a better word, to be taken seriously and to be whatever. Yeah. And it was like breaking my soul,
really?
Stacy. It was breaking my soul.
Yeah.
And it was not making me an effective leader. Yeah. I sure as heck was not an effective communicator because I was so concerned about what other people were thinking of me that I was unable, in my opinion, now in retrospect, to do a really good job. And I think a lot of those feelings come from the same thing you mentioned, which are ignorance, just not knowing, thinking you're paying somebody a compliment, but it's really not a compliment, or thinking you're helping give advice and guidance when it's really not helpful.
Yes.
And what you said about you just want your students to find their voice and be able to use that voice, either through written expression or oral expression. Like, isn't that what we all want?
Yeah.
It's just to be able to be our authentic selves and communicate our ideas effectively.
Yeah. For me, I think I do that. And
you do. You seem
but
very
it's hard
authentic.
for me. It's hard for me to do that, though. It's hard for me to do that because I have, I grew up in a certain environment, and when I was a juvenile, I was in trouble, and I was on probation, and I was a ward of the state of California. And when I go in the juvenile detention centers and they run my name through a federal background check, it's the state of California documents, my violent past. As an adult, I haven't had any problems. I haven't had any issues. I solved those problems. Like I said, God shook me and was like, you either go left or right. And if you go left, you're done. And it was serious. And you can talk to anyone I know, all my friends, family, they will all testify to it. They all know it. So I don't really hide that. But what I do is I don't talk about it because the more you go into detail about it, people are turned off. And I wonder if folks will do business with me. And the opposite end, when I'm in the African American community, oftentimes people are like, "Oh, why are you talking about that? What do you know about that?
What do you know about it?"
Yeah, they want you to demo it. They want you to demonstrate it. And I'm like, I'm not about to demonstrate. I'm not about to let you out. If you were as official as you pretend to be, you can find that information and you will see that I'm not a charlatan. I've never been fake about it. But then it's also a sense of, I want people to know who I am. And I want people to know who I am today and what I've done. And even when I was in trouble as a kid, I was the captain of the baseball team. I was battalion commander at JROTC. I was in student government. So I was always living a good life. I just didn't, like for people to make fun of me. I just had that black rage of a very dark-skinned African-American kid, and I didn't know how to deal with it except through fighting. And once I solved that problem, once I was able to be humble and be confident in myself, then I want other people to see me for who I am now. But that oftentimes is difficult because you have to step outside yourself. Excuse me. For one, I'll do business. Oftentimes people will ask, well, do I make this check out to you or to the GCI? I was like, well, it's a real company. What do you mean? Have you done any research? And they'll look at me and they'll go, oh, it's a real company. Or I'll look at people and I'll talk to folks and they'll say, oh, well, you're in the county jail or you're not in the city. And so I go in the city and I do well and the kids love me. And I say, oh, I'm in the city, and they ignore me. So one thing I try to do, and it's difficult because I have community partners that I care about and I want to align with them, but I have to stop caring about what people think. I just cannot care. I cannot assume. I can't make any assumptions. And I have to know in my subconscious who I am, what I'm here for, and what your
goal and
that's
mission.
Right, and where I'm going. And I think people can see that. They can see that through the work I do. They can see that through what I've said in the past. If you look at, my essay to UC Santa Cruz, talks about me wanting to do stuff in education. I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to law school for a year. I didn't finish. That's a whole nother interview. We could talk about that later.
That can be part 2.
That could be part 2. But I just want folks to know my heart. I want people to see my heart. I may not come across as the nicest guy, but I'm a good person. And I am really nice, and I can't be a pushover. But I want people to see that. But then oftentimes I don't want people to see it because they'll take advantage. The kids, when they see Coach Stacy gives money, they're always asking for money. Some of them are not. When people see that I pay really well for my staff, people sometimes they want to work for us, but they don't want to align with the mission. They just want to get paid. They don't really want to support me. And so I just have to navigate that. And I think every single one of us on earth is dealing with that. If we're conscious of who we are and where we're trying to be and how do we live a better life, I think we're conscious of it. The one thing I don't want to do is focus on it too much.
Yeah, I hear that.
Because I'm a philosopher, I will go deep into the rabbit hole.
Yeah, right? I hear that. Okay, so let's come back out.
Sure.
So let me ask a question.
Oh, yeah.
So how do kids I kind of understand the college piece. How do elementary, middle, and high schoolers, how do they find your program? And are you currently accepting more kiddos? Have you sort of reached your max? Or?
Yeah, we're currently accepting kids. We have programs in Hazelwood. We have programs in St. Louis Public Schools. They're day and after school programs. We also have a program in Germany that's abroad, so it's an international program. We're trying to grow that as well.
Not Germany, Missouri?
No. One store of Germany. Yeah, one store of Germany, the Holte Gymnasium. Whoa. Oh, yeah. So it's really cool. I used to live in Germany, Nuremberg, when I was a kid for 4 years.
Cool. Because your dad was in the Army.
Military, that's right. But I don't remember anything about it. And so this is going to be a good experience for me. And it's actually kind of close to Nuremberg as well. Wunsdorf is. And so we're trying to expand in other places as well with that. It's mainly on the administrators right now for kids to participate. So our after-school component, everyone's available to participate if we're at your location. If we're not at your location, I promise you I've been to your school district, unless it's a private school, and I've pitched the company. So either I'm in the process of trying to get your school board and administration on, on the same page with us, or they just kind of have let the ball go, or we're in the process. Things are ascending. I think it's next year we're going to have more spaces for kids where we're not in the schools, where we don't have district level contracts. So we will have a summer institute on our own location. So kids, our summer institutes have usually been like at Gene Slade Boys and Girls Club
Sure.
or at Twillman Elementary School. And so now we're expanding them to our own site. I think we've talked about that before. And we're going to try and have our own overnight camp this summer. So that's one way for next year the kids who want to participate
But
can
maybe
participate.
don't have a full school MOU and all that stuff, but they still have the individual drive and motivation.
And then they can compete in our league here locally if they're middle school or elementary, because there's no opportunity in the Greater St. Louis Speech and Debate League for kids who are in elementary or middle school, I don't think. And if they're in high school, they can compete in the Greater St. Louis Speech and Debate League if they want at their own school. They have to pay their own registration and all that. But if they're in our league, we pay for everything. We pay for everything. We take care of everything. So right now we're just trying to reach more schools. We don't have much high school.
And you charge.
No, we don't.
You don't.
No, we don't
so
charge
you have grants.
Yeah, we
you
charge
don't charge
the
the students, but you charge schools.
We charge the schools. Yeah, we have program fees for the schools.
Which
yes, we
makes sense.
Yes, and as we grow,
but you don't charge an individual student.
No, the students don't pay anything. Right?
Amazing.
And that's an obstacle for students who are at school because they have to pay for their National Speech and Debate Association membership. They have to pay to go to every tournament. Tournaments, they stay in hotels most of the time. Sometimes they have to pay for those hotels. If you're in a good program, you don't have to pay for that, but you still have to pay your entry fees. So that means the more you want to compete, the more you have to pay. And that, to me, is the exact definition of inequity.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
We want you to participate, and we know that this is best practice, but we're going to charge you for it. Or not even that. For my students in North St. Louis and in the city, they don't even have the opportunity. Right? It doesn't even exist for them.
Forget inequity. They just don't even have the access.
And that's intentional. That's intentional.
Of course it
the
is.
United States federal government banned, most HBCUs from doing speech and debate.
I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Oh, yeah.
What?
So have you seen the movie The Great Debaters? You've seen the movie The Great Debaters?
I mean, it's been a minute, but now I
Denzel
got to put this on my watch list.
Wiley
Okay.
College, that's right. So African-American schools were having success in the early 20th century. Oh, yeah.
You just blew my mind here. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And so it became a thing. And I know
I'm not the only one. If you're listening, people, and you also learned something new, please.
And some of my speech people who are like the PhD folks who are, been doing it since middle school, high school, they can tell you the exact timeline. Me, I can't really tell you the timeline because it just bothers me to talk about it. But it's a case. It's a fact that we were not allowed to do it. So for example, when I made it to the national final round, not at community college, but at the NFA at the 4-year level, I was also a national finalist, a top speaker, and I was the only person that looked like me. There was no one. I would say I debated 1 or 2, maybe 3 African Americans my entire career at Western Kentucky. As far as judges, I mainly only have had 2. In any of my elimination rounds, especially my national final rounds, there were none.
So you are single-handedly changing this.
Oh yeah.
Activity. I wouldn't call it. Is it a sport? What is it? Extracurricular?
To me, it's all that.
Oh, okay.
It is all that to me, and it is a sport in the sense because of the competition and the preparation.
Sure.
But one good thing is that everyone goes pro in speech and debate.
Oh.
Everyone does. But there are people from policy debate in the CETA, the NDT community. There are more African Americans there. There are more African American professors. There are more African Americans who are doing better, but there's still a high level of marginalization for people to look like us, and there's a huge lack of opportunity. So if you look at the world debate team, if you look at teams, if you look at the All-Americans, they don't look like me, right? It's because there aren't that many Dr. Marianne Ides who are going to see a Stacy Bernaugh in class and put her credibility and tenure on the line to empower my voice and to change my life. There are not that many people, and so maybe you're raising the generation that will do that. I will. And one of the things I was going to say about the program fees is that over time they reduce. So we are, as the organization grows. So you kind of reward tenure and sticking with it. Yes, at least that's the plan. I love that. That's the plan, makes right? That's the plan. Of sense. So we'll reduce the burden on the school districts, the financial burden, and we'll rely more on the community for grants, more on corporations, and then we will have less staff as well because it's a student-run program. It will be student-run like JROTC. Of course. So instead of needing 5 coaches, you only need 1 coach who's mainly a facilitator. Everyone goes to the Summer Institute for a lot of their learning, and then it just keeps going. The problem that we had in the St. Louis Urban Debate League and other leagues that have been here is that when the director leaves, it disbands, right? So whoever's in charge, and to me that's kind of surprising. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings here, but I could care less about how people feel about the work I do and what they didn't do. And just to be honest, I don't understand how that happens. I cannot fathom that I would have a staff, that I would have a board, and I would have employees that I'm paying, and that I have to move, and no one is prepared or motivated to step to the plate.
Can I tell you? I was asked yesterday, now that I've left Prevent+Ed and I'm in Birmingham, I was asked yesterday, what do I hope my legacy is at Prevent+Ed? I'd been there 16 years, executive director for 6. And I said, I've seen it. I know what my legacy is. My legacy is that Jenny stepped into that role. You walk into the office and it's like I never left.
That's what you want.
That's exactly what you want.
Yeah.
Board is doing its thing. Staff are doing its thing. It is going along. Not because of me.
Yes.
But it's not dependent on me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And because you have staff that are committed, you've trained, you've taught, you've built in succession plans, you've instilled within young people the skills and the knowledge to keep it going. That's what we want.
And that's where I am now.
Yeah.
Right? So
and that's what you're doing.
I'm trusting people. I'm hiring a director of forensics, so I'm going to pay more than I get paid.
Cool. Okay.
Because I need things done. I need to grow the other programs, and I need to expand. And I just can't, we have, this fall, we're going to have around 15 locations. I can't be.
No.
I only have 5 after-school slots that I can be in, so I need people. And thankfully, we do have good relationships with McKendree University, their speech and debate program.
Cool.
With Webster University. And pretty much with every every effective and I would say successful speech and debate program, college program in the nation.
Wow.
So if there's a great college program, we have access to their coach, their best students. So capacity-wise, we can grow to 1,000, 5,000 students. That's not a problem. The problem is, are we going to have equitable partners? Who's going to pay for it? Because it can't be Stacy paying for it.
Sure.
And can we hurry up and start? Right? Because a lot of times we'll get folks who say, this is great, we want to do this, and they'll take forever to start. And it's like, look, the lab, that's not the competition. So in some of our spaces, we've been having practice without the games. And so folks are like, oh, this is great. Like, but you haven't seen the product. So we need, and that's in a sense my fault. This year I'm pushing things faster. We're going to have our first tournament in October this year, and we'll have tournaments October, November, December. And then we'll also have tournaments in February, March, April. We'll have an all-city finale. We were supposed to have an all-city finale this year. It just didn't happen, unfortunately. I think it was just about the pre-planning, and transportation was an issue. So we've solved that problem within the districts as far as transportation.
Awesome.
Communicated early to the district and the principals about what our expectations are for the competition, because the magic doesn't happen unless you compete, right? The literacy improvements, all the data points that talk about the change and the critical pedagogy and how you embody that to change yourself, you have to compete against other people. You can't just compete in the classroom. You have to travel. You have to put on the suit, right? You have to you have to lose.
Yep.
You have to reflect. You have to reiterate. You have to iterate, and you have to go back, and you have to do better. And you have to keep doing that over and over. And for me, I immediately saw my growth when I started doing it. But when I went to Western Kentucky, I was like, I'm behind. I think I'm good. My teammates are really good. And some of them have been doing it, like my wife, since middle school. And so...
Oh, I wouldn't want to be in your house when you two have an argument.
Oh, my gosh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, right? Like, it is ridiculous. We both debate. I did more. I did a lot of the other events as well. I kind of completed our program. She didn't, because she was working. She graduated in 3 years.
Wow.
But she just has this fire still for coaching, but she kind of applies that. You can just Google her, see what she does. Okay. But she just applies that to her organizing work. She's a community organizer.
Maybe she needs to come on the podcast.
And she's a consultant. She will. Yes.
Okay.
She will do her
thing. Make that happen.
Right now, she's doing a lot of work with environmental justice.
Cool.
So one of my son's elementary school, Janet Elementary, had nuclear waste in it.
Yep.
So she's the one from the PTA who kind of spearheaded those conversations.
Wonderful.
And then she's collaborating with other established people who've been doing the work here in St. Louis 10, 15, 20 years. And they're really trying to get some changes. They're really trying to seek some environmental justice. So we do have great discussions, great arguments.
I'm sure, very robust.
I can call on her to help me anytime. But I am at the point now where I'm trying to be more trusting, because I have to have staff in place when I'm not there. And I have to have students who step into leadership roles and who can do that. And so that's a little uncomfortable for me. It's a little awkward for me because I have a certain standard. And I did that in the past a little bit in Indianapolis and in Kentucky, and it worked well 75% of the time. The other 25% of the time, it was problematic. But that was my fault. That was because I did not emphasize the training and the processes. So what I've been doing, last night I was just up on Canva, taking from my notepad all these new processes so I can train all my new people. And it's great for me to be able to have that confidence, to know that I can take people who are very talented and then I can kind of get them acclimated to our organization and then still achieve these impacts that I want to achieve. And it's life-changing. It's amazing when we work with a student who is not respectful, who's having issues academically, and they turn it around. And they ask, can we debate today? And they're upset at you because they weren't allowed to debate. And then you start to see them apply it in the classroom and eventually to the community, to their everyday life.
If people want to get involved, let's say they are listening and they were involved in speech and debate and they want to help out, or they want to bring your program to their school, or they have a student in mind, or they want to donate some money to this. How do they find you?
Well, you can find me we have a website, so it's gci-stl.org. And we do have if you want to make a donation, you can do that right from the website. That's not a problem.
Okay.
You can also call me. So my number is 270-991-8151. My local phone number is 314-626-3424, but that's the Google number, so you could call my personal cell phone as well. If you want a program, have a teacher or a principal, administrator contact us, and we'll work with them. I don't want the parents or the students to worry about the funding at all. I just want them to be able to show up and participate. So if they can guarantee they can participate, I can guarantee the resources will be there. Even if the school district is like, oh, we don't really know you, we've never heard of speech and debate, we need to see this, because that's what a lot of people say.
Oh, yeah.
Well, how does this look? Can we see this, right? I say you should call my references, but I also know that people want to see things. So I was like, okay, we'll raise a certain amount of money so we can give you just a small MVP, just a minimally viable product that you can see from what we're doing, and that always works. It always works well. We always go back, to the client, and every client we've had now has been a multiple-year client. So this is our third year in HSD. We were working in SOPS before COVID. COVID kind of put a stop to that, so we are back to that. Thank you to, especially Dr. Hennigan at SOPS and Catherine Risley at HSD, Hazelwood School District, and even the superintendents, right? Because when I meet with folks, and this is even to the people who haven't ascended the program, I always get meetings in St. Louis, whether it be the superintendent, whether it be the mayor. And so I want to commend the community and the school districts just for that, just for helping me to belong, right? So just understanding what I'm doing. And oftentimes they don't know me from, when I first came here, I didn't have a lot of pictures from the previous program. The website wasn't great, and my confidence was really low. And no one could tell. Everyone took our meetings. Everyone said yes.
That's great.
And so I'm just really appreciative that St. Louis has given us the opportunity, because without that opportunity, I'd have a couple of kids and a big loud voice. I probably wouldn't be here. So.
Well, and I'm appreciative of you
for
taking the time out to talk about this, for, I think, your vulnerability in talking about the challenges that you face as an executive director. I certainly feel like I can commiserate with some of those challenges.
And advise on some of those challenges.
Well, and I think it's like mutual support, okay?
Yeah,
it's mutual
that's
support.
Right.
Jenny and I still need to learn more from you when it comes to selling your product, because program service fees, we do not do a great job on. And so I think that that's something we could learn a lot from you.
Okay.
Seriously, though, thank you so much for coming. If you liked what you heard, I know you did.
Thank you for having me.
Please consider rating, reviewing, and subscribing The Preventable. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us at The Preventable, brought to you ad-free by Prevent+Ed. Prevent+Ed works to reduce or prevent the harms of alcohol and other drug use through education, intervention, and advocacy. Please visit their website at prevented.org. Like what you heard? Rate, review, and subscribe to stay up to date with what we are serving on The Preventable.